We are here today to discuss this very hot topic of our motion here. So allow me to first give the definition of a few of the things which is in this motion. So self-censorship is to remove parts of a book, films, etc., which are a threat or offensive by the viewer itself. A National Censorship Board is a government-appointed body responsible for reviewing and regulating content to ensure it aligns with legal and moral standards. For example, Lembaga Pengawasan Filem, which is a Malaysian government-appointed body. So our stakeholders in this motion are the society itself, people and the people who consume this media. With our current status quo, which is social media is a must and revolves around us in this current age. So society has the will to choose themselves whether they can censor fake things, the things that they want or the things that they don't want. For example, parents or consumers can pick and choose what content to self-censor. I mentioned parents here, which are for kids, because sometimes kids don't have the maturity to self-censor themselves. So this comes to my first point, which is freedom of speech and freedom of choice. Us as consumers of media can determine for ourselves what we want to see, what we want to watch. For example, on social media platforms such as Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, you can choose what you want to watch and what you want to see. It is innately in our desire and will to install these apps in the first place. So it's our choice that we install these apps and we want to watch, want to look at media on that social media platform. Why do we buy a smartphone or smart devices in the first place if we don't want to scroll through this social media, where most people mostly go through social media with their smartphone or smart devices? For example, of this freedom of choice or freedom of speech is, for example, if there is a gambling ad or video game advertisement, we have the freedom to choose what we want to do with that advertisement or content that we see on social media. So we can choose to install the game, we can choose to just scroll past because we're not interested, or we can remove it from our page if you don't want to see that kind of content anymore. How we can just we can click a button and that kind of content will not be shown on our feed. So, for example, if you install TikTok, you can choose genres to choose, such as sci-fi, cryptocurrency, science, mathematics, or any other kind of genre which aligns with my argument here, which is freedom of choice or freedom, and freedom of speech. So, but the government or people of power are controlling what we see. What we see on social media, they are controlling what kind of content we consume, which completely neglects our freedom of choice and freedom of speech, such as North Korea, where so many social media applications are banned. So only the government can choose what to say, what they know, what the society should know. And this point will be further elaborated by my second speaker here.
Would you agree that North Korea is a minority among the whole countries when it comes to censorship of media? Would you agree that North Korea is a minority of good governments inside this world?
Right, thank you for your answer. Down. So the second speaker here is saying that is North Korea a minority compared to the good governments in social media. But might I remind you, like I said earlier, the people of power can choose what you want to see. So we might think that, oh, this is a good kind of content, but we never know that actually the government want us to think that way because they are controlling what we should see, which completely neglects our freedom of choice here. I hope that answers your question, and that's all from me. Thank you.
The center of the 15 stands for minutes 57 seconds.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, the opposition clearly see why this debate stands with us. First, before I continue any further, I would like to thank and Assalamualaikum to the Speaker of the House, the adjudicators, precise timekeeper, the opponent team, my team, and member of the floor. Now, as the opposition leader, I will be talking about, do we accept the definition, what we will prove in this debate, and also my rebuttals against the Prime Minister and my point on why this motion should be rejected. Now, first, the motion that is given by the Prime Minister, we reject the motion because we reject the definition that is given by the Prime Minister, which he stated that he wants to remove books and films. Rather than doing that, it's been better for us regulating and reviewing books and the films. Next, the point. Yes.
Where they see the parts of books, not the whole book itself.
Thank you. That will be answered by my second speaker. Next, the Prime Minister's point is he want freedom of speech on the social media. You need to know, social media is a wide platform which can be accessed by everyone. So you said that it's a freedom of speech, it's a freedom of choice. In Malaysia, the youngster, there was the influencer who stated that SPM doesn't matter because he managed to succeed without SPM. He managed to get rich without SPM. So do you want the people, the youngster thinks like that? Do you want the people not taking SPM? We want the people to be uneducated because it is a freedom of choice. We don't want that. We want a better country. We want a better nation. We want a better nation. If we want a better nation, we need a better education. So this is an example on why national censorship is a good choice to protect the citizens. Next, I will be moving on to my point, which about social media. Now, because such country, for example, Malaysia, Indonesia, even United States, this country is a democratic country, and we will avoid a new ideology that could bring a disaster to this country or any country. For example, communism, Nazism, fascism. This ideology is being spread online, is being shared by a lot of influencers, and most of the people who watch this video is the youngster who are easily being interested on this kind of things, who easily be liking this kind of thing, who thinking that this thing is a good idea, this thing is better, this thing is good, but instead this is a bad thing for our nation. Next, if the government want to use self-censorship, how it is aware? It is aware for everything. How do you think the individual aware of what they post? How do you think, even the private sector, how do you think what they do is right? Because it's individual, it's themselves. There's no third party, there's no second party. Themselves. How do you think that? How do you think that what they do is right? How? So it could be that there's nothing wrong, but in fact, yes. Are you wasting my time? Now, this is where national censorship is the way to protect the people, to protect the nation, and for the better future of our country. Next, I will be talking about private companies. They have to follow the regulation which the government have set up to them. Private company, for example, Telegram, Twitter, Facebook, they have to follow the regulation. If they are interested to represent and make their service in our nation, it is because it is the government responsibility to be acknowledged, to take care of what the people have, what the people will get from this private company. And this is why this motion clearly stands with the opposition. Now, before I end my speech, is there any POI from the government team?
Yeah. Shouldn't the government provide campaigns rather than censorship?
Campaign. Do you think campaign will solve this problem? Are you sure that campaign will solve this issue in our nation? I think no. I think that's all for me. I would like to end my case.
Trust. The opposition team trusts the government so much that they are willing to let the government control what we're seeing and what they don't want us to see. Today, we as the government team will show you that we as civilians have the right to see what we want to see, to speak when we want to speak. Like my first speaker has been trying to say this whole time, freedom of choice and freedom of speech. Now, I would like to move on to my rebuttals. Firstly, the first speaker of the opposition team said that there has been youngsters who've been watching videos of people saying that SPM isn't important. CJ Prajarana Malaysia, that we all know, of course. And by this, if youngsters see this, they'll be influenced and be like, maybe I shouldn't focus on SPM. Maybe I shouldn't focus on my academics. However, these are youngsters. And who are supposed to be responsible for said youngsters? Exactly, parents. So, yes.
By youngsters, we also mean teenagers. Are teenagers responsible? Teenagers can think for themselves. Are teenagers responsible for? Are parents responsible for these teenagers?
Okay, teenagers are usually under 18, of course. From primary school to middle school, which is below 18. And if you're following the law, below 18 is still considered as children. So, anyway, I'd like to move on to my other rebuttals, that youngsters can be using social media, in which social media can show bad things such as communism. And when youngsters see this, they can be interested in communism and be like that this and be thought that communism is good. Well, I would like to move on. I would like to repeat my point as well. Youngsters have parents. Parents should be responsible on what their youngsters are watching. And are youngsters even supposed to have social media? For example, Instagram has age restrictions as well. And you can also pick on what you want to watch. So still, we are still implying that everyone, every civilian has the freedom of choice. Everyone can see what they see. They also talked about how private companies such as Telegram and Facebook are taken care of by the government. So the government should be taking care of these private companies, and so they have to follow the regulations of what they're showing on their social media. But isn't that what we're talking about right now? That's not really a point here. There's no point to this. Now I would like to move on to my points. My first argument is that the society itself can watch, and anyone can watch what they watch. For example, an adult can install Instagram to see other people's feelings about topics and they can look through Facebook to see where anyone's going on vacation. It's their choice. But you might ask minorities, minors and children. Yes.
If you have a children and he is interested to be a gay, will that be your responsible even though they learn it from the media social?
I've already stated that children and media social, you need to be more specific on the media social part, because most media social don't even have age restrictions, like I've said before. And it's up to them on what they watch. And if they're being influenced by media social to be gay, then it's their responsibility and their parents, like I've stated many times before. Now I'd like to move on and continue my point, in which how kids can watch cartoons. And yes, cartoons can have the ideology of promotes the ideology of LGBTQ. And with that, that's why I'm trying to say here, parents play an important role in our children's life. If we don't watch them carefully, they could end up being gay, just like what the first opposition is trying as in their PY. Now, I will move on to my second argument, in which the National Censorship Board or the government could be biased. They could be biased, as in they can control what their civilians, what they want us to see and what they don't want us to see. For example, a user on Facebook could post a complaint about the government, and the government could easily censor that post, so we as civilians can't see it. So we have the image that this government is a perfect government, has no problems at all, in which the opposition team is trying to believe here. And they could also control what they want you to see. For example, a post glorifying the government. Maybe they can put that in everyone's feed so everyone can see it, so it increases the image that the government, that us civilians see the government. And I'll give you another example in a big factor, like what my first speaker said about North Korea and China. North Korea and China both has banned social media, big social media such as TikTok. And if they ban this, the civilians won't know what's happening outside of their country. And what does North Korea do? What does their government do? Exactly. North Korea glorifies a certain figure, Kim Jong-un. This in which makes the civilians of North Korea believe that Kim Jong-un is a godly figure. Do we really want that? I don't think so. So, as a conclusion, we as the government team strongly believe that everyone has the right to see what they want to see, and they have the freedom of choice and the freedom of speech. That will be all for me. Thank you very much. I'm very proud to be a government team.
Prime Minister's friend, 7 minutes, 5 seconds. Then to continue our debate today, I would like to call the second speaker of opposition, Aisha. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And a very good morning. I've been to the Speaker of the House, the British Timekeeper, the honorable adjudicators, my worthy teammates, my own team, and members of the hall. I, as a deputy opposition leader, will be providing the rebuttals regarding side government, as well as providing my own points from my own team. My conclusions of my speech will be, first we'll be talking about the rebuttals, and then we'll be moving on to my points, which may support my rebuttals. Now, let's first talk about the whole definition of what the government has proposed. There is a direct contradiction between his definition of both what exactly censorship is and what exactly National Censorship Board is. And this is a very important contradiction which my first speaker has brought up. They were talking about their definition is removing work films and etc. And then they were putting, and the definition for NCB is for reviewing and regulating. So this is a very important contradiction because what is it? Is it removing, reviewing, regulating? It's not removing, it's not part of reviewing and regulating, so it means that their definition is unused. Therefore, side opposition wants to put the definition as reviewing and regulating book forms, etc. as the definition, so that there is no more further confusion for that aspect of the debate. And then for now, all the points regarding side government, from prime minister to deputy prime minister, is we're talking about how it takes away the freedom of speech, the freedom of choice. Why are you trying to think that censorship is mutually exclusive with taking away the right of choice and the right of speech and the right of freedom? It's not a mutually exclusive thing, and this is why. Because you're not taking away the freedom of speech. People can still discuss it. People can still think about it. There are still other there are still third-party websites, apps, which you can still access in this part. You are not taking away, you are not making a law saying that you can't think in this ideology. You're making a law to regulate what content someone gets, to make sure that they don't get misinformation. And even when they don't get misinformation, they have much more freedom of those rights that they're talking about, because they have actual good information that they can discuss it with their teammates. And then they were talking about how they were giving examples such as China and North Korea, taking into account that China and North Korea are communist countries. What about the democratic countries? What about countries who have people still have voting rights? They still have their rights. Why are you trying to push this narrative that censorship equals taking away someone's right? That is not exactly comprehensive in what National Censorship Board is, because you said that National Censorship Board is about it's reviewing and regulating. Therefore, it's not taking away the right of someone. And then let me move on to the Deputy Prime Minister's point, in that he was talking about how the parents should be responsible for the children, but then he also proceeded to say that social media is not for children, while his arguments are all talking about social media, but then social media is not for children. Which side are you on? Regardless, you can't argue that there are still children on social media. What side are you on? Do you not want children on social media, or do you want parents to just regulate it, but illegally? Because again, children can't be on social media, as said by second speaker. And then when he was talking about how multiple adults can download different apps, etc. Yes, I agree with that. People can still download other apps, and again, censorship is not trying to take away this right of this app. However, I'm going to give an example of the black market. When you don't regulate these things, for example, black market, if you don't regulate it, if you don't make it illegal, then people can still access the black market. And their argument is essentially saying that if we don't regulate this black market, then we're progressing people's freedom of rights, right to freedom. And again, I've been putting a focus on this because there are certain things that the government needs to regulate because it is detrimental to society. There is things that are not. Okay, so if the people have the right to freedom of speech, the government has a right to govern. The government has a right to know what is good for their society. If you're not saying that National Censorship Board is good, then you're taking away, you're not allowing the government to do their job properly. If you were a government and you think that this thing is bad, won't you try to regulate it? If you don't regulate it, then it's not an issue of rights here. It's the issue of what happens when that thing is much more bad than what happens if that thing is bad. Because again, we're not taking away the freedom of speech because we're not taking away all media, and because those North Korea and China are a minority. We're taking away something that is detrimental to society. No government will take away everyone's social media. The government will instead regulate social media. And I will get into that, into my points regarding the film and media. And then they were talking about how the NCB is biased. Let me finish, please. The NCB is biased. And then they were talking about how you can control what citizens believe. I already addressed this as communist countries are very much an exception in this rule. There are more democratic countries. However, even if big governments, especially such as those in Malaysia, have different ethnics and people with different ideologies, there's two sides to a government. You have the government, you have the opposition. There is no chance for everyone to push the same ideology to all people, to all members of to everyone in this country. It doesn't even say how general news itself is not really censored, so people still see the news. They can still make their own judgment. And And I would also like to give an example. So they're very narrow-minded in this. So we shouldn't censor any downgrading images of our leaders. What if someone posts our young Dipertuan Agung's images naked? What happens then? You won't censor? Now let me move on to my point, which is directly related to my rebuttals before this. Film and games have two things: safety and preserving morality. Again, censorship is not just about regulating. For example, in movies, the movie Oppenheimer has an image has a scene where Florence Pugh was naked. And what did the government do? The government didn't take away Oppenheimer out of Malaysia. They instead censored Florence Pugh's naked body. And you still get the content, but however, you're not preserving your own morality as a Muslim. You're not preserving your own morality to see a woman naked on screen. And then again, pop culture, film and games is much more popular with the young generations. And which is funny, and this is funny because they were putting definitions as book and films. However, they're more focused on social media. What about the book and films? And then the pop culture, film and games, the one that you define is more popular with the younger age, which is much more influence. And these are available to youngsters as opposed to social media, because second speaker said it's not related. Therefore, we as the opposition team strongly believe that National Censorship Board is required for the good of society, and that it is not taking away your rights, because that is a small-minded thinking. Thank you.
Let's welcome the third speaker from the government, Mr. Muhammad Akid.
Did you do this? Please give me 10 seconds. I'll begin the speech on to pornography, LGBTQ, genocide, explicit contents. We as the government have been trying to convince the educators and also the side opposition that we are preferring self-censorship over National Censorship Board over and over, because we have seen that the opposition did not manage to convince us even, and also the educators, how their mechanism of the National Censorship Board is going to work. Alright. Before that, I would like to rebut some points given by the opposition side. Alright, the leader of the opposition side had mentioned about that websites that are controlled by the government, that they also regulate the censorship. They can regulate the censorship, and also because of this, media's a wide platform that also that they are relating to the status quo, that the influencer, that there was an influencer that said SPM doesn't matter towards the youngsters. And they can protect the citizens by abolishing the medias as a whole. Alright? This is why parents are held accountable, as mentioned by the Deputy Prime Minister. Alright? And they said that the ideology, the bad ideology that can be exposed by the citizens, by the society, and shouldn't the government provide campaigns rather than censorship? As I feel for this, and they did not manage, not yet, and they did not manage to say more about the campaigns, right? That seem to be quite contradicting. And other than that, they also mentioned about how labels that use social medias that are controlled by the government. And can we see here now that these labels actually need the social medias to know updates about the globally current issues that are occurring right now? Isn't that legit? And also they mentioned about how youngsters, about the legislations, the youngsters that are exposed to these negative contents, shouldn't there be legislations? There are legislations which the youngsters below 18, as mentioned by the Deputy Prime Minister, the below 18, the below 18 are considered under the supervision of the parents. And also, I've also POI'd that they also POI'd us. If a child chooses to be a gay, how are parents going to do about that? But how are you so assured that governments can control what the people want to do? Isn't that discrimination upon citizens? Yes.
We are doing that governments maybe cannot control, but at least we're reducing it. What can parents do?
What can parents do? Exactly. Parents can control what their children and what their children are exposed to. but governments are taking society as a whole. All right. How about the laborers? How about the not yet? How about the people? How about the people that are exposed to these negative contents? They are so narrow-minded, and also the deputy leader of the opposition are trying to say that, are you abolishing the medias? People can still discuss it, that voting rights, but how can people know what the manifestos of the leaders that are the competitors of the parliament if they do not know updates of these manifestos on social medias? And also that black market is not a good place. Yes?
Why would the government censor manifestos regarding the government?
Okay.
Why would the government censor manifestos by the government?
Why would the government censor manifestos by the government? We are not trying to say that the government is trying to manifestos. We are not trying to say that the government trying to censor the manifestos given by the government, but we are saying that we are using social medias as to inform, as to show how the updates of the leaders, how they do, what they do towards the society, so that the society know what they have done towards the welfare of the people, so that they know which leader to choose, isn't it? Also, they mentioned about the communist countries, and don't they see that even the democratic countries right now, the majority of the democratic countries in the whole world, regarding our status quo, does not even implement national censorship. And also they mentioned about Yang di-Pertuan Agong naked. Doesn't that need to be reported by the citizenships by using social medias to comment and to report towards the right party, which is the police, and what they have done towards the Yang di-Pertuan Agong. Yes.
Tell me what policies is under?
What police is under?
Policies are under what again?
Policies are under the government, of course, and the polices may be the board of the government, but we are not trying to say that the polices. We are not trying to say that the police, the multimedias, are of course responsible to censor what for example Yang di-Pertuan Agong naked. But in the first place, the citizens itself should be commenting, should be noticed about the updates about the Yang di-Pertuan Agong naked in the first place, right? Rather than the police knowing about them first, which is the police is under the National Censorship Board. And also, they mentioned about, we are talking about the definition. They are trying to challenge our definition, which with the book and films. But we are trying to say that those are the epitomes of the medias that are around us right now. And also, we are trying to say again, and I'm summarizing everything that we are trying to say here towards the educators, and I think the opposition should also side with us. And the Prime Minister said about the freedom of choice and speech. We are trying to emphasize here that the freedom of choice and speech is really crucial upon the society. And also we mentioned about the parents who are held accountable, and this bears witness that people who opt for what they want to see are held accountable for themselves, not at the party to interfere as a whole, which nationally you have to bear consequences for what you do, whether it's good or bad. They choose what they desire to have in the first place. Why did you buy a smartphone? For you, and not the government to control what you want to see. For example, the North Korea, which controls what their people are seeing. And parents are responsible. Their child should be supervised. For example, the cartoons of, for example, the Steve Universe, as mentioned by the Deputy Prime Minister, the ideology of LGBT can be exposed in these cartoons. So, what are the responsibilities of the parents? They need to control their children, and also that civilians. And also, I'm mentioning again that North Korea and China banned. We are mentioning again that North Korea and China has banned vast social media such as TikTok and whatsoever big social medias that is actually discriminating the rights of people to choose what they want to see and what they want to have. And also what is occurring outside the globe, they are restricted to see, and that's all I'm very proud to be the government.
Leader of the opposition team is ethical magician. The government is very narrow-minded. Why am I saying this? It is because one, they are focusing solely on social media, and second, they are focusing solely on individuals. But before I elaborate even more, Assalamualaikum and a very good morning. I bid to the fair educators, the wise speaker of the house, precise timekeeper, my worthy opponents, and my fellow teammates. First of all, there will be three components of my speech today. I would like to talk about the summary and all the recap of what we have presented to the table today on both themes, and then I will go into rebuttals of the opposition. Of the government, and then I will go into enhancement of my teammates' point. Okay, first let's go to the first component. I'm talking about the recap and quick summary to remind the whole of what we had presented. First of all, Prime Minister had talked about how society has a will to choose for themselves, and they are talking about how they have talked about over and over again how this is individuals' responsibility, and the government doesn't have that much power over it. And the Deputy Prime Minister has stated how it is parents' responsibilities, which is both rebuttals and your points. It is parents' responsibilities over what their children are watching, and then over and over again parents' responsibility. And second, they are talking about how government are biased. If you look at this whole thing, the summary of this, they are trying to say that the government doesn't have enough power. The individual does. What do I have problem with this? I'll go into that in my rebuttals. But then, okay, let's recap to my team's point now. We are talking about first of all, we are preventing. My opposition leader has stated how we are preventing ideology inside our country. My deputy opposition leader has stated about morality and all of these things that we are saying. We are saying that this National Censorship Board NCB is even better than self-censorship. So let's go into the second component of my speech, rebuttals. I would like to mention how the Prime Minister had not stated the scope on where this is, so I would like to assume that this is global. And if this is global, the examples that you've given over and over about North Korea and China, I'm sorry, Prime Minister has stated, Deputy Prime Minister has stated North Korea over and over again. It is one small example of a bad government, and North Korea is even liked by most of the country. They are not agreeing of how they regulate the country. So again, it is not a good example. Next, let's go into your point. Society has the will to choose for themselves. You had stated we can choose what we watch, we can choose what we see. But I would like to mention how yes, we can choose this, but we have no knowledge over this. Why? Because social media are also used not only for bad things, but also for the misinformation that is being spread everywhere. Misinformation. Individuals doesn't really have many things to know about misinformation. Why? This is because they don't have the knowledge. Why do they not have the knowledge? Because they don't have the power to go over one by one what are they seeing. So they'll be seeing all this misinformation and believe it. Unlike the government, who has the power of researching over and over. Government is a big organization. They have a lot of people in them. They have some organization that could and will actually go over which one is misinformation and which one is not. So again, individual doesn't have enough power, and not the government. And then, I'm sorry, Deputy Prime Minister had talked about parents' responsibilities, which is like rebuttals of my opposition leader's point and his points also. Parents' responsibility. You had stated people under the age of 18 are called as youngsters. Okay, by definition, that is correct. But 16 years old and 17 years old, ladies and gentlemen, 17 years old in Malaysia, they can drive. 16 years old can ride a motorcycle. So Are you telling the parents to tell their children who can already drive to, oh, you cannot use social media? Freedom of choice. You are talking about freedom of choice. Yes.
Did I say that the under 18 are under the supervision of parents?
Yes, they are under supervision of parents, but is it really effective? First of all, and you cannot. Okay, sure, parents are responsible over them, but this is the real one. Let's talk about the real one. What happens? What happens to these children in real life? Not all parents are like that. No, not yet. Not parents are like that. Not parents see their children one by one and be like, oh, this is not good, this is not bad. So it is the government's responsibility to take on that responsibilities to take care of the children. Please, do not live in your fantasy world. Yes.
Are you saying parents are useless and we should hope on the government?
When did I say that? I'm not saying that parents are useless. I'm saying that some of it are not functional as they are supposed to. And this is the real world. This is what's happening. That is why the government exists. Thank you. And then, Deputy Prime Minister had talked over and over again how it is the government are biased. Government is again a big organization. A big organization where they have the government, they have the opposition, they have different kind of races, they have different kind of religion, they have different kind of ages, they have different kind of beliefs. For one singular particular group to actually force on their bias into the government, that is not possible. I'm not seeing the bigger picture here. And then we're moving on to the third component of my speech, which is the enhancement of my team's point. My opposition leader had talked about how we are preventing ideology. Again and again, we had talked about this censorship is not banning. So again, with your rights of choice or whatsoever, rights of choice. We're not talking about banning. Like my deputy opposition leader had set a clear example where a movie shows a person that is naked. They do not take away that movie, they let it air, but they censor the specific scene. We're not taking away any freedom here. Again and again. What is it about all this banning stuff? It's censorship. Please understand that.
Yeah,
And then my opposition leader had stated how the self-censorship is not the solution, and people are sometimes not aware of what they had posted. My deputy opposition leader, in the other hand, had said about morality and how even if this is freedom of choice, the government has the responsibility to take care of their people's morality in general. Even if they are bad, they shouldn't give it to the society just because it is their freedom. That is why us as the opposition says that this house prefer national censorship board over self-censorship. That is all from me.
Is regulation taking away people's rights? Side government wants to live in an anarchy. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good morning. My reply speech will be consisting of two things: what we have proved and what side government didn't. And why is that my component? Because side government has failed to prove anything. They were supposed to prove that self-censorship is more better than national censorship board, and understand they're doing this by presenting a case essentially saying that freedom of speech and freedom of choice. Now let's move on to the first component of my speech. What have they not proved? They have not proved that national censorship board is mutually exclusive with freedom of speech and freedom of rights. They have not proved exactly why when we implement national censorship boards, we are taking away people's rights, because this is regulating. This is not forcing people to do something. Censorship, we are regulating. You agree that the definition is reviewing and regulating. Is that taking away people's rights? Is that taking away people's rights to regulate? Do you want to take away law next? What next? What do you want the government to do? And then, not to mention they provided a flawed definition. I'm going to talk about first the contradiction between both what censorship and national censorship board means, but also that they put the scope to film and books, and then proceeded to talk about social media. If you put the definition as film and books, you focus on that. They were talking about social media. They didn't say media, social media. And then even if we're talking about rights, the government still has a right to govern. The government has a right to implement this. So even rights of freedom of choice of the citizens, what about right to govern of the government? We have not proved why one right is better than the other right. And even then, if you want to do self-censorship, people are still exposed to it. So you're not censoring anything. If people still need to consume that media in order to self-censor, you are still exposed to it. So they didn't even cater to the motion, not the self-censorship, not the preference, not the National Censorship Board. The government has failed to prove any of the motion. And let me entertain the fact of their point. They were even third speaker was arguing for our side. He was talking about how the police should regulate it, which is a counter mechanism, by the way. And he even agreed that the police is under the government. So he is arguing for our side and took 2 minutes above to prove that. And then they also argued that people are exposed to bad ideologies. Why are they exposed to bad ideologies? Because the government didn't censor it. And then what? And then let's move on to the second component of my speech. What have we proved? We have proved we catered to both definitions. We catered first to the social media. We say that social media is not effective and that it's easy for people to be misinformed, which the government will know because the government, especially regarding politics and global issues, because the government is directly a first party in that. The government can know what you should believe. They know what information is true because they were just thinking about the bias, the minority governments which are not democratic. And then second, we cater to their definition, films and books. We tell you that these pop cultures are popular with youngsters that they claim to care for and yet don't want to regulate because parents, not all parents have the incentive to protect their children if they don't get anything bad from not doing it. So what if you regulate this? Then the parents need to be responsible. Need, not have. And then they were talking about, and then we're not even talking about how the regulating part of their definition. It's then also ratings on film, ratings on games, ratings on books. Do you want to take away that ratings? Oh no, people have to read it first, and then they know that I shouldn't read this. What? That doesn't make sense. And then, in conclusion to my reply speech, National Censorship Board does not take away freedom of speech and choice. It's not mutually exclusive, but does ensure regulation. And thus, this House believes that NCB is better because government failed to prove why self-censorship is better. Thank you.
The Speaker of the Opposition spent 4 minutes 8 seconds. Finally, here is the reply speech from the government team, Mr. Amirul Shamil.
Hi, I'm back for the reply speech. In 3, 2, 1. Trust, trust, trust. That's what has the opposition been saying over and over again. Why do they trust the government so much? Like I have said earlier, people, like my second speaker and I said the government can be biased. And what did they say? They said nothing. And they said some flawed rebuttals that even the government and the educators might not understand. So allow me to continue. So first of all, the opposition side said we have flawed definition. We're just talking in the scope of films and books. But if they did hear correctly, we said films, books, etc., etc., and that includes social media also. So also the opposition side said Oppenheimer, that film where the National Censorship Board, they will censor this because they regulate and review this type of content. You can just watch this kind of thing. So how about youngsters and children? Oh, my children watch Oppenheimer. There's a naked woman. Oh, but it's censored, so it's fine. What are the functions of parents that we have justified right there? Also, by the way, the opposition side has misunderstood us from the start, where we did not say at all in our speeches where we want to abolish this National Censorship Board. This House prefers self-censorship over National Censorship Board. It's not we're trying to abolish this thing, this whole National Censorship Board. It's preferring self-censorship should be the priority of society and citizens, which benefits our stakeholders right here. Okay? So, which brings me to my second part of my reply speech. Outside has been saying that the government can control what to censor. The government are glorifying themselves. So what did the opposition say to this? I don't think they said anything like that. And second of all, they said that oh yeah, they said the National Censorship Board is just reviewing and regulating, not banning completely or something. So what are they doing? They're just reviewing and regulating. They're just looking at it, reviewing and regulating, reviewing and regulating. So isn't that a bit contradicting with what the whole, what the ideologies for our motion right here? Also, they said, how about children which are under 18, which they have justified that, how about people who can drive, like 70-year-old people. So, like I have justified earlier in my reply speech, like this Oppenheimer, they censored it, but you can still watch it because these films are for over 18. And they've been saying over and over again about children, and then suddenly they brought up about Oppenheimer, which is an 18-plus film, and they said the National Censorship Board has reviewed it, and regulated it, and censored it. So even the creators of social media platforms allow me to, the opposition side has said that children can be on social media, but even the creators of these social media platforms, you can look up at any kind of social media platform, only allows people to join at a certain age. So can you see that people who are 7 years old allowed to join this kind of social media platforms? Or watch Oppenheimer, for example? No. I'll give an example on this, like Reddit, which I said in my speech. And also, my next part of my speech is my second speaker said, are you saying parents are useless? And said, no, some of them are. Some of them are not functional. So isn't that contradicting? They're just supporting us in the first place. We asked, are some parents useless? They said, oh, some of them are not functional. So they're siding on us. And this clearly shows that the opposition side should side with us along with educators themselves. Thank you for your time. I am proud to support this motion. Thank you.
The speaker spent 4 minutes and 33 seconds. Let's stay up for today and we will allow the honorable educators to decide the winner of this debate. The winners can